Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to make a rock, or more specifically, a rock hideaway for hamsters and other small furry creatures. This is a really easy DIY, so don't worry your socks off if you're not very crafty. You absolutely will be able to make this. It just requires a few slightly odd supplies, and they will be on screen now for you to check out and gather and collect and make sure you have before we get started. A really important thing you do need for this DIY is some kind of frame to work with. This is going to be the thing you build the rock shape around while still leaving a lot of open space for your hamster or other small furry to nest inside it. So I'm going to be showing you how to make this with two different types of frames. The first is a bowl, and you can use any size bowl that you want, and the second is a piece of mesh that I have just manipulated and bent into a random rock-like shape. I'm not sure mesh can be rock-shaped, but I'm sticking with that anyway. So step number one is to take your frame, whether it's your bowl, whether it's your mesh, whatever it is, take your frame and cover it in a layer of cling film. This is going to make it really easy to remove the frame later on. The next step is to take your tissue or paper strips, dip them into your flour glue so that they are completely wet, and then lay them on top of your frame. And you're going to want to do this until the entire thing is covered. Now, if you are a fan of wearing clothes, I do suggest strongly that you cover yourself with some kind of apron or put old clothes on or something like that, because this can get quite messy. Now, if you're using the bowl frame, this is obviously not very rock shaped. Very few rocks are this smooth and this perfectly rounded. So you want to add a little more rough, rocky texture to it. And to do that, all you need to do is screw up a few pieces of tissue or paper and turn them into sausage shapes or ball shapes or whatever shapes, and dip those into the flour glue and then stick them to the side of the bowl. Then you want to take some more strips of tissue or paper and cover them over to make sure those pieces stick and are fully secure onto your framework. Just keep adding more layers and more screwed up bits of tissue until you get a shape that you are really happy with. Now, the more layers you add, the stronger the structure is going to be, but the longer it's going to take to dry. So do keep that in mind. If you live in a colder climate, you're not going to want to make this too thick, otherwise you're going to be waiting weeks and weeks for it to dry. Once you're happy with the way it looks, just place it somewhere safe and warm. Now, I'm going to do these same steps but using the mesh frame instead, so you can see the finished result and the different way that it looks. Now, with the mesh frame, you don't actually have to add any screwed up balls of tissue or anything to it because it's already in a random rocky-like shape. So you just need to add a few layers. I would say at least 3 layers, but more if you can. Again, it's going to be stronger if you add more layers, but it is going to take longer to dry as well. So just keep adding layers until you can't see the mesh through the tissue paper. And once again, when it's covered, when you're happy with the way it looks, place it somewhere safe and warm to dry. Drying time will vary depending on the climate where you live. For me, I was able to leave these out overnight and the next day they were completely dry. For you, it might take a couple of days. It really does depend. Once they are completely dry though, you can remove the frames and the cling film from inside. Shouldn't be too difficult to do this. You may need to give it a little bit of a tug, but it should come out fairly easily without damaging the rock. And then you can go ahead and start painting it. One thing I almost forgot, before you paint it, take a pair of scissors and just cut away any of the rough edges, and also cut a doorway into the hide so your hamster or other pet can get in and out of it easily. Now please be sure you're using paints that are known to be pet safe. As far as I'm aware, soy paints and vegetable dyes are the only ones that are definitely 100% pet safe, so those are the only ones that I will be recommending that you use. I use vegetable dye. You can buy this in shops, you can make it yourself at home. It's really useful, you can get it all different colours. The 3 colours I've chosen to use are black, blue and green. I just find these work best together. They're also the same colours I used on the DIY crater bowl a couple of weeks ago, so I know they work well together. And just to make sure the black isn't too harsh of a black, I've added just a single drop of it to a small bowl of water, and that gives you a nice washed out grey kind of colour. So then I'm just taking my paintbrush and I'm covering over the entire frame. Now, I'm not being too perfectionist with this. I'm not trying to get all of the areas completely covered. I'm going to leave a few bits white just so I can add in the blues and the greens later, and that just gives you a nice random mix of colours and makes it look a little more natural. This step really is just a case of going crazy and adding the colours where you think they belong until you're happy with it. Do keep in mind though, as you add these paints to it, the structure is going to get slightly more damp, therefore it's going to get a little softer and won't be quite as sturdy. That's perfectly normal. Just be careful that you don't damage it during this stage. Once the paint dries, it will be perfectly fine. You just have to be careful for the time being. When you're happy with the way it looks, again, just leave it to dry. This time it shouldn't take as long, only a couple of hours at most, and once it's completely dry, it's ready to put in your pet's cage. And this is completely safe if your pet decides to chew on it. It really doesn't matter if they ingest any, they may decide to use parts of it for their bedding. I know my hamsters always do that. They pull off bits of the wall and then go and nest somewhere else. It's really not what it's there for, but if you're enjoying it, fine. And that's all it takes to making a fake rock hideaway. Like I said, super easy, just a little bit time consuming and a teeny bit messy, that's all. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up to help support the channel. You can also share this video with your friends and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. So freaking warm in here.